Also at noon, this one's on ABC. Excited to be on the call for the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame traveling to Clemson. Couple things to account for in this game. One, I think these teams are really similar. Just saying, I think these teams are really similar. And you're going to say, wait, hang on a second. How can you possibly say that? Let me just explain, okay? And I know you're probably looking to me like I have three heads, and I totally get that. But while you look at Notre Dame's point totals the last few weeks, they've been very impressive, right? They absolutely destroyed Pitt. They had a big number put up against USC, 48 points scored in that game. I look at Notre Dame's offense, and right now, just lacking a little bit of consistency. Now, Audric Estime last week against Pitt probably ran the ball better than he had in several weeks. He got a bunch of carries. They're not using as much of a running back by committee approach. It does feel like down the stretch, it's going to be Estime's show, and it probably should be. You can get the young backs, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, get them 5 or 6 touches in the game, and then you get Jabron Payne in there for short yardage situations, and you'll be in good shape, but it's got to run through Audric Estime. Notre Dame's wide receivers have been disappointing. And now you take it one step further, they will be without the services of Mitchell Evans. And this is a significant loss. If you look at their distribution chart this year, especially on third down, Mitchell Evans is without question the most reliable and most targeted receiver, pass catcher, I shouldn't say receiver, pass catcher for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And this is a group that prior to last week against Pitt, they've struggled to be consistent pushing the ball down the field. What does this kind of sound like? It sounds a little bit like Clemson. Now, the one thing Notre Dame hasn't done is they haven't really beaten themselves with turnovers. That's been the story for Clemson up to this point. They have won the turnover battle just twice this year. Both wins were convincing. One was against Syracuse, the other was against FAU. They were +3 against FAU, +2 against Syracuse. They have lost the turnover margin in all other games. 6 games in which they were -1 or worse in the turnover margin. And if you look at when some of those fumbles have occurred, they've occurred in the red zone, specifically inside the 10-yard line of the opposing defense. That can't happen against Notre Dame. It cannot happen against Notre Dame. Clemson has had an underwhelming wide receiver performance so far this year. Now, Bo Collins, it appears like he's becoming a little bit more of a feature guy. Jake Brenningstool, the tight end, he's become more of a feature guy. They've tried to get Tyler Brown in there some, but they've had a couple hamstring issues. They've had some guys that have been in and out of the lineup. But collectively, just like Notre Dame, the receivers have not played up to their standard. Cade Klubnik doesn't appear at the moment like he's as confident as he needs to be. He's got great physical ability. He's great when it comes to running around and creating opportunities, but he does have the occasional miss that is significant, and some of those misses last week resulted in either missed big plays, but also an interception where he airmails it to Brenningstool on an over route, and it's picked off by the safety that's in coverage. These two teams mirror each other also, not because of the underwhelming receiver play, but because they are really made along the defensive line. The strength of both teams is along the defensive line. Notre Dame does have an advantage with their defensive line against Clemson's offensive line. Now, Clemson's tinkered with a couple of spots. They've moved their left tackle to right guard. They try to get their best 5 on the field, but Notre Dame's defensive line has been every bit as advertised this year, and in some ways better than even I anticipated coming into the season. That group can take over the game. Conversely, Notre Dame's offensive line has been very good, very solid. Anchored by Joe Alt at left tackle, they'll have their hands full against the Clemson defensive line that while the rest of the defense maybe has had some ups and downs, the defensive line has been outstanding. The linebackers have been very solid, and in coverage, they've been pretty solid as well. These are two teams that love to get it done on the defensive side of the football, but if Clemson can avoid the critical mistake, this game should be one that goes down to the wire. I'm obviously not going to pick it being on the call. It's going to be a blast to be there. I can't wait to be there for Notre Dame and Clemson, but a couple of trends to take into account in this game. Clemson is 0-4 against the spread against teams with winning records this season, and Notre Dame is 11-4 against the spread on the road since the start of the 2020 season. So a couple of trends to take into account, but I think this one's going to be a photo finish and one that should be decided in the fourth quarter.